Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Hero Podcast 64 with my co host, the real Kirkwood, Pete Kirkwood, correction, and of course, myself, Ryan G. On today's topic, the climax of the hero's journey. Pete, could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, well, we've sort of been discussing the hero's journey through its different stages, and as I've kept researching the topic and studying, and it's interesting how many different parts it gets broken down into, depending upon who's doing an analysis.
Mhm.
And initially, I really thought about this personally as three parts, right? There's a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Right.
But that isn't necessarily true, because this would technically be the end, but it's not really the end, because you have to talk about the climax,
Right.
and then you have to talk about the post climax, because they're two separate, distinct, different parts. You know, leading up to that moment of triumph in the hero's journey is very different to what happens after. So this is like when you're going in to fight the final boss,
Mhm.
you're literally at that stage where you've essentially completed the journey. You're just waiting to take the last step or the last few steps. And I think this is often where you will see a lot of, it's like that calm before the storm sort of a vibe that you get at this point, as you're you can picture the samurai meditating before the battle. You can picture the camp being quiet with people, you know, looking towards the battle the next morning. These
Right.
sort of impressions of the climax you get coming up. And I think that it's really a time for reflection on what you've learned over your hero's journey.
Hmm.
And it's a time to sort of integrate and prepare and double check and all those things before you sit the test. And this doesn't matter if your hero's journey is literally passing calculus at school or if it's creating a new business, right? Before open day, check you've got everything ready to go and launch. It is that moment. And the thing is really interesting because when you talk about the climax, you feel like there's this huge excitement going on. And I'm not saying that there isn't, but there's a calm that comes before that storm, right? This isn't the actual battle with Thanos. This is getting everyone organized to turn up for that battle. That is calling out to the people to be there in that moment that you've met through the journey of making those alliances and assembling before we go to take on the big bad. We've got to bring the army together in our last moments of preparation.
Mhm.
And I think that the key is to focus on this preparation and this work. If missed here, well, how is the hero's journey going to end? You know, like you can literally picture the guy running off to battle without his armor buckled up correctly and tripping over himself. He's too keen to get into the fight, and he hasn't properly mastered his training. He hasn't properly equipped himself. He hasn't properly completed his hero's journey to actually be ready for that final battle. Doesn't mean it's not there. Doesn't mean you're not at the final battle. Doesn't mean you can't go on a hero's journey and not pull your weight and find you get to the end of it and realize that, oh shit, I'm probably going to have to do this again. Either because this event's going to kick my ass and set me on an entirely new path, or it's going to put me back to the beginning of this path, right? If you fail the calculus class, you've got to sit the paper again from the beginning next semester. But maybe you get kicked out of university and now you've got to start a new hero's journey getting a job. I don't know what your individual circumstances are, right? We're talking about those principles behind the journey. And I think that I really want to touch on meditation. Like I just was briefly speaking earlier about how meditation made such a difference today. And I felt I had so much to do, and I took that moment to clear my mind because I felt I didn't have any time. So I created it. And it really felt to me like that moment where you've got a few people sitting around a campfire, discussing some of the battles that have been, some of the things that you'll do in the future, not really talking about the battle tomorrow too much, but just readying themselves,
Hmm.
checking themselves off. Because when you're going to fight that final challenge, you need to have the peace within yourself that you've done what you need to do to go to war tomorrow, right? Because winning's not guaranteed.
Hmm.
You don't know that you're going to succeed. What you really want to do is you want to, after the battle, you want to know that you absolutely gave it everything you had and you did your best. So before you draw your sword, you want to make sure you think through those things, not when you're lying on the ground bleeding out.
No, that's funny you should say that because it's very much akin to. Let's see. Is this the right book? No. Yeah, here it is. Hagakure, The Way of the
Oh,
Samurai. And I believe in one of the passages, the author speaks on a proper samurai is already dead, meaning he's already accepted the fact that he will die for whatever purpose, for whatever lord, shogun it's, you name it. He has decided during his training, during his meditation, that he is already dead. Not he is to die on the battlefield, but he is already dead. Meaning, there will never be a hesitation in his sword because he's dead anyway. A dead man will not tell a tale, a dead man will act, for the act has already proceeded.
mm,
And in that, we find preparation of the worst thing has already happened. Is that image of climbing up the diving board, walking to the edge of that board, looking down and realizing, oh shit, this is pretty fucking high, and jumping anyway because you're already wet. You have
right.
already experienced this before, but I remember very vividly my first time going, oh shit, this is pretty intense. While it might have been like a meter removed from the surface of the water, which isn't that
Mhm.
special. But as a young 5-year-old kid, I remember it very vividly going, oh my God, etc. And then, of course, my dad, being the Chad that he is, kicking me from behind, like, just go. Me falling flat on my stomach, of course, and then realizing it's not that bad, but now my stomach hurts. Quick shout out to my dad. But the next time, which was very soon, it was easier. And to go
Yes.
back to the philosophy of the samurai or the Bushido code or whatever code they used, it is in accepting the worst case scenario. I've already overcome the biggest mental hurdle. So should this come to pass, I can be okay with it. Which funny
Mm,
enough sounds very much like the surrender experiment. Because in the surrender experiment, it is not that I simply give myself or surrender to the event that is. I surrender to the inner resistance that comes up. Like, I do not want to make my calculus homework. Is it truly that, or am I resisting my own evolution specifically in mathematics? And it's usually the latter. And in that, we start to realize unnecessary insecurities, insecurities developed by the mind, either as a coping mechanism or to protect yourself against some imaginary bullshit. And say I was a samurai, I cannot afford this imaginary bullshit. I cannot afford this inner resistance. because resistance makes my blade slower. And if
Mm,
my mind is as sharp as my blade or similar to my blade, I cannot afford to be 1 millisecond slower than whatever is in front of me, be it the tamati mat or an actual resisting opponent. And speaking of resisting opponent, isn't it very similar to BJJ when all of a sudden Lee, you have your grappling gi or your rash guards. You go into the mat, you've warmed up, presumably properly. You've done your drills, and now there's this aha moment. Now it's time to roll. And it's very
absolutely.
much akin to that. Because technically, if there was no one there but the two of you, and your training partner has decided we're going for real, it might well be the most intense morning or evening that you will have in a long while. And I
Mm.
think competition is very much similar because if it wasn't for the referee, I think we would kill each other. Pete, what do you
But
have?
I do see where you're coming from, right? Because there's there's a true warrior spirit in that moment, and it's almost like as you were speaking, I could see multiple microcosms of heroes' journeys on perspectives large and small. And
Hmm.
it's almost like making a decision is a hero's journey in and of itself, right? So there's a problem which calls you to action, and
Right,
your hero's trial is thinking through it. Then you have a realization, which is your climax before the decision, which is the final which is basically beating the final boss. And then you've got in that last section what comes afterwards, which we'll go into next week, I think. But that making a decision is a hero's journey, or the entire process of a hero literally starting out as a young boy and fighting an evil overlord to topple a tyrannical kingdom in his prime, like that over decades, that can be a hero's journey. It can be so many different things.
right.
And when you mention how with the Bushido code, with the samurai, there's the moment where they accept that they are dead. It's almost like in the hero's journey of becoming a samurai,
Hmm.
that is this moment. That is the climax, is where you make that acceptance, because the next thing that comes after that acceptance is the test or the demonstration that you have internalized that belief. Because telling yourself, "Oh yeah, well, no, man, no, like I'm dead. Yeah, I get it. I'm dead." In the next moment, your actions will actually demonstrate whether you do believe that, whether you do internalize that, whether you do live that.
Right.
And there's almost like a little mental trick you can catch here. When you turn up at the final boss of your hero's journey, and it's the climax, when you're at the climax,
Hmm.
the question is, who put you there? Because if you put you there, odds are you're on the winning path. You've got yourself ready, you've got yourself prepared, you've got your army, your books, your techniques, your equipment, your magic, your data analysts, whatever it is you need for this challenge. You've got
Hmm.
them, and you're here, and you did it. Or the universe has pushed you to this moment. And here you are, like it or not, the dude's in front of you, and it's about to go down. Do
Hmm.
or die. Now, you could win or you could lose in either scenario. The saying is, I think, God takes care of fools and something else. Like I can never remember the exact wording, but the universe might bring you to that part, and it might bring you through it. That might be part of your journey. But it might also equally dump you there for you to get trounced and realize that you need to repeat your hero's journey again. You need to go through another cycle. Versus when you turn up ready to go. Now, when you turn up ready to go, that might be because you are ready to complete your hero's journey and defeat the boss or pass the test or whatever it is that it needs to be. Or you might actually just be too arrogant and you need to go back around again, or you need to go learn something else, do something else, and you're defeated.
Right.
But it is interesting how when you ask yourself,
Mm-hmm.
how would you rather turn up at the climax when it's crunch time, when it really counts? How would you rather turn up?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is a really important question for a hero, because if you think about it in terms of the decisions we have to make in a video game, you've got a beginning, you've got an end, you can go there, and there might be a bunch of side quests along the way. Well, should you do them or should you not? In life, how many things do you do on the way to achieving that goal? Well, do they help? Do they not? Sure, some of them might just be a break for you to recover, for you to refocus, to reset, take a weekend away with a beautiful girl and clear your head, gives you a chance to refocus your creative energy towards a new project. That might be a benefit to you. It might just be a distraction that you're just getting out of work and doing something else. Maybe you need one. But the point is, when you're sitting there, how satisfied are you with your life? How satisfied are you with your decisions, with your choices? If the universe brought you to that moment, how in tune are you with the universe and your faith and your trust and your connection in it, that you are in that right moment and you are ready for it? And it's not a what's the term I'm looking for? It's not a beat down lesson. It's a genuine. It's not just delivering you to that moment to smack you around and teach you that you're not ready. How are you in that moment? That's only something the individual has the power to determine. If you think of someone like Epictetus, who
Right.
was the slave, or Diogenes the dog, or any of these famous philosophers that seriously demonstrated how they was their
Mm-hmm.
choice, regardless of external circumstances. When you're sitting at that climactic moment, it is your choice to decide how you are. You
Uh-huh.
follow where I'm going with this, brother?
Yeah. Because speaking of those great philosophers, I believe it was what's his name again? Epictetus, who
Mm-hmm.
clearly said, "You may fetter my leg, but you will not break me." And in
Exactly.
that, we have the answer to how to show up to any climax. It is that on the one hand, regardless what happens, I will be okay. And the opposite side of the coin would be, well, once you're done, it's my turn. And in that, you start to realize the difference between the beast and the bitch, the prince and the toadpad, as ACD often talks about.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
is when you've been brought down, slammed against the canvas of the floor or the wall, when you've been kicked so hard in the stomach that just for a second all the breath of your lungs is gone, and you're left with the pain and realization of your mistake. In that moment, you have two choices: game over, continue, or should you continue, of course, are you prepared to pay back every little bit that is owed?
Oh, totally.
And in that, you start to realize a almost a third quarter, because every coin has three edges, presumably. And in that fine line, we find not only am I going to be okay, not only is it going to be my turn, but you better be prepared for what I'm going to give you. And I don't care what you give me, I will devour it. It is almost telling the universe whatever obstacle you put in my way, it is nutrition, it
Mm.
is prey. And last time I checked, 9 out of 10 times, if a prey fights back, I'll enjoy it. Because I like the struggle, it tastes better. If that makes sense, Pete.
It does, right? Because it comes down to the congruency, right? Like if you're in line with your character on that journey, when you get there, you are ready to go. You are ready to fight. And whatever the challenges of that climax are,
Mm-hmm.
you're acclimatized to them previously by virtue of going through the trials of your journey. Like I'm sort of thinking, I'll share a bit of my personal life here, right? Think of two relationships in my mind. One where I've put that work in to be in that place, but I haven't necessarily nailed it and gotten it correct. And I haven't quite, it's not quite congruent, right? So even though I'm at the final boss, I haven't quite got all my equipment together in that parable, in that relationship. And I can see it continually cycling back, and it doesn't resolve. It doesn't go forth. Versus another relationship, I can see that it doesn't matter what I do because I am who I am. I can't stop it resolving. And anything I do to fight or resist it, as long as it's true to myself and within character, right? It actually won't work. So for me to break that relationship, I would, if I was to
Mm-hmm.
like take all my clothes off and piss all over myself and do a shit in a cartwheel and the rest of it in public, that would be so out of character that it would completely destroy any relationship. No worries. You can wreck your life if you want to. That option's always available to you. But as long as I continue to be myself on my path and the rest of it, that relationship continues to prosper because that person connects to that storyline. So this hero is always a hero as long as I'm being myself versus
Mm-hmm.
another one where it's actually like I'm trying more to be a hero that fits for that person versus I just am a hero that fits for that person. And I can see the differences in those relationships with those women. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because it's about that congruency and the cycle of the hero. Like it's like almost like a wheel, right? The hero's journey is like a wheel that just keeps spinning
Mm-hmm.
at a different size, at a different thing, because you go around it. You never stop. There's no end to life. There is no beginning and an end. There are only measurements along the eternal of life. Your moment in the climax where you're sitting now, where we're talking about, when you come to peace, it resolves. It comes through. When you've got all of that congruence within yourself, you see how it works. And when you don't, right, as long as you're honest and real with yourself, you'll see how it doesn't. And that gives you the opportunity to learn and grow, to go back and all the rest of the stuff. Whoa, that's a hell of a message I just got. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that I think that knowing how your hero's storyline is meshing with the reality of the hero's journey gives you a powerful reference to where you are and where you should be. Because where you are on your hero's journey might not be where you should be. You might still need to go through a few trials, but you might have found yourself getting to the climax too quickly. Or vice versa. You know, you might be stuck in going through the trials and you're like, I really should get this over and done with. You know, I've done enough market research. We've interviewed enough people. We're doing a third round of this. Why don't we just fucking launch the product and get it done? And you realize, holy shit, I am ready. I have made that decision. And all of a sudden, your market research, you're like, no, fuck it, we cancel that and we're going to launch next week. And poof, you've just teleported yourself past the month of trials you'd planned before your climax of your hero's journey, right to that moment where you can then go forth. You get where I'm going with that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It is
And
often
I think that,
it almost sounds like a warning towards not over preparation, but death by analysis.
mm,
Analysis paralysis almost.
yes.
It is that anxiety that comes up when either you're being overwhelmed by the data that you've received from the universe concerning whatever context, and you don't know what to do, or you're not yet willing to do what is necessary. In that willingness, I also start to realize that this is famous story, or not famous, a well known story of the samurai being caught in the rain. He is sent to deliver scrolls. Yeah? And just before he leaves, it starts pouring cats and dogs. And he wants to complain, but before that, he observes his environment and he realizes that complaining doesn't feel good. But he also sees the peasants complain and shout and curse the rain. And he simply asks himself, and this is a lesson in integration, what would I do as a samurai? Would I complain like the peasant? Would I close shop like the shopkeep? Would I curse the rain like the peddler? Or would I act as I am in the human now, which is a practitioner of Bushido, the protector of my lord, a samurai? And in that we find the answer to the climax. I don't know why my camera is now showing me in a
Blurry
slightly
focus, right?
very
It's giving you that,
unfocused. Interesting,
giving you that thing.
but what the samurai decided to do was shut the fuck up because I'm gonna get wet anyway. And in that, he put the scrolls away, the back under his kimono, and he decided, fuck it. If I am to get wet anyway, might as well keep my head held high. And he walks to the valley of death and no return to one day to become his king, Amorfati, because it is his fate. And in that, I
Correct.
started to just realize, wait a minute, to go through this climax, one has to one has to accept his fate and realize certain stoic principles.
Mm-hmm.
It is the amor fati. Whatever my fate will be or is, I will accept it. For
Mm-hmm.
in the climax of my storyline, be it it is my fate to die, it is my fate to receive punishment or jail time or whatever Tony Welcome to call.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, Memento Mori, what everything has to end. There is no infinite cycle. It has to end, and be it my life, my career, my relationships, so be it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the climax of the hero's journey is the end phase of the hero's journey, where all the preparation, all the mid bosses has been defeated for the single purpose of beating the big bad, the big boss, the Thanos, the Demon King, the Devil, whatever trauma you're facing can be overcome should you be willing to do so. Because just like the samurai, he has made one of the most horrific things you can ever go through, death in battle. But of course, the chance of being captured and tortured. He has absolutely integrated that into his very being. And
Mm.
therefore, you start to see the storyline of the samurai, where it is so much a part of himself that, and correct me if I'm wrong, samurai means to die for a greater cause, to die for his lord, etc.
I didn't know that, but it would make sense. Carry
I
on.
need to double check it, but I do either, I'm not completely sure, but I remember something about that. But if that is true, then through death I will be reborn.
Mm.
Yeah, remember the first time when you were in a rear naked choke and they applied the pressure as they should, and you can just feel that sharpness of the choke. And in the then and there, you had to be okay with the fact that if there was no one else and he didn't let go, you would have been unconscious and maybe even dead. And somehow, you just had to learn to be okay with that. It took me 6 months before I made this into a game and fully internalized that. Putting aside my ego, putting aside the fucking frustration of tapping, and just being absolutely okay with it. Because I know one day I will lose, but one day I will
That's
win.
crazy. So that's really interesting because when I began jujitsu, I'd already done a lot of that internal mental work. And my problem is my strength, right? Like physically, I've spent way too long neglecting my body, and now I have to build that up.
Hmm.
And that realization that I could die at the hands of another man, I've never, like, I've always known that. I've always known that my intelligence and my ability to communicate and provide value is what keeps me safe. Because
Right.
why would somebody kill me when I can be of more value to them alive? And there's actually a video of mine. If you scroll back, I'm proving the point. It's like 2 in the morning. I'm in a very, very dangerous neighborhood in a country that I'm not even a fucking citizen of or a resident or anything. Like realistically, on paper, I'm fucked, and I'm walking around like, hey, what's up? Who's around? Like, I don't care because anyone who runs into me, I know I'm worth more to them alive than I am dead because the majority of the country spoke my own language. So I knew I'd be fine. But that internal beingness comes with the realization that I'm at a point now where I've realized that if I die, I'm working towards what I want to achieve. So whether I die or not, it doesn't matter. So when I get into these life or death situations, I just don't care. Like I've let go of that part. Where for me, maybe my mind's already created the barrier, right? Around the fact that I could die in this thing because I've been so close to dying so many times in my life. This is stupid. I really have actually been. There's no way I should be alive. So I've sort of internalized the fact that, well, while I'm alive, I'm going to keep going. And when I'm not alive, well, then I'm not alive and I don't have to worry about it because I'm not alive. So I just keep doing whatever I'm doing. And I think, when I was assaulted and robbed, I had a trauma response to that. But when I compare that across other people who've been through similar things, it was much reduced. It was much more minimized. And that state of mind, I think, has been pushed out of us, where it's like the samurai. He accepts he is there and he has given his life already for his cause. Now he's just living it through until that becomes a reality. And when we train and we fight in jiu-jitsu, that knowingness of what you're going up against, you're right, there's a lot of trust there. You're really trusting that other person is not just going to kill you. And it comes down to, where are you going to let your mind go? Because if you let your mind start talking into that side of those insecurities and that kind of ego, right? Like there's healthy ego and there's unhealthy ego. Man, that's so not explained well in our modern age philosophy. If you get into that unhealthy ego, if you get into that insecurity around, they're going to kill me, I'm in danger, that sort of stuff, it's going to make that fighting very hard, versus accepting, of course they could kill you and this is dangerous. Like, and what? You could die outside being hit by a bus. But if you internalize this kind of thing, like a lot of the stuff I do, like, someone might assassinate me. The people around me are protected as fuck, but someone might come after me. It's unlikely. It's very unlikely, but it is a possibility. So you have to make a decision. Are you going to go down this path? Are you going to go to jiu-jitsu and risk getting injured, getting killed? And, my finger's fucked. Like that's not normal. And whatever the fuck's gone wrong through my arms and my chest and my shoulders and shit that's causing this massive pain, that's not right. That's not normal. My hips, like, man, there's some issues there. But after this, there's my gi. I'm putting it on. I'm going to jiu-jitsu. It's Friday. There's like parties and everything planned and we're going out tonight. But I'm still going to go take my injured ass to jiu-jitsu and do what I can because I made that decision. And these parts, like, that's like the climax of a hero's journey in of itself, right? This week, what do I do with my Friday? Well, I fucking stick to my word and I turn up at jiu-jitsu like I said I would. And we go and do it. Versus, but there's a party to go to, so we'll just do 4 out of 5 classes this week. Whoa, all of a sudden, that seems like nothing, but it's actually quite a major change in my storyline. Because I've made that commitment and it's been like, what, 2 months, 3 months, I haven't missed a week. And I think back to where I said earlier with those storylines. Yeah, one of them is things that I said that didn't come true, that didn't happen, that created a blah, blah, but the other one that's running smoothly. Well, if I did start doing shit like not turning up to jiu-jitsu where I say that I turn up to jiu-jitsu, I imagine it wouldn't take long before that would fall apart either. And we realize how much of our commitment to our decisions, to our character, when we reach these climax periods and everyone's sitting around in that quiet evening before the battle tomorrow morning, how many people run away? How many people sneak out of camp in the night and just scurry off into the woods and try and turn up the next day after the battle? Are you on the hero's journey? Are you actually on the hero's journey, or do you just want to be? Because it takes that commitment, it takes that decision. And Tony knows about this, right? Keep showing up. That's literally, like, man, those words are engraved into me every time. Like, Tony reminds me that, just his beingness, because that opportunity to experience the climax of a hero's journey is available to you. But whether you can take it, whether you can hack it, whether you can step up and walk into it, well, only you can measure that.
Hmm.
I I am going to talk for an hour, and we don't have an hour. How are we for time? We must be about the half hour mark.
Well, at least, yeah, well, 40 minutes now.
Okay, we're well past.
Well
So
past, yeah.
let's look at just what happens just after the climax, like the final battle
Hmm.
next week. But I think that, I mean, if people have been listening to our podcast by now, like, obvious plug is obvious plug. I'm a success coach. I walk myself through this loop. I walk my clients through this loop. And
Hmm.
if someone is seeing how this stuff sounds powerful, you should probably reach out and talk to me, because I can probably help you apply it to your life so it actually creates epic storylines and things like shit that you can be proud of to tell your grandkids. Who doesn't want that kind of a life? I don't care what it is, what you are proud of that you want to tell your grandkids, right? That you would, but that's what you want to have. Tony's on the vibe. So I know I can do that for people. And I know from experience working with you that when it comes to the hero's journey of building a business and creating that and putting it together, or even actually more specifically taking one that you already have and improving its performance,
Hmm.
that you can give that perspective to keep someone on that path of a hero's journey so they can have their climactic moment of realization of how the bigger picture comes together and the data integrates and it all links into something that is just a beautiful, harmonious, almost living being that's a business. Am I interpreting your work correctly, Ryan?
Yep, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. There's a
Well,
lot of beauty to be found in just doing the fucking work and fully accepting whatever consequences may come because it's part of it. It's accepting that you have to make a few mistakes. It's accepting that you might slip up during BJJ and be in a very disadvantageous position, which happens to me, in my own opinion, a bit too often. It is accepting that you will be blowups with women. It will be, you have to accept the fact that it will take a while before you get some clients. You have to accept some clients might not become retention clients. You just have to accept whatever issue comes up. And it's not that it makes you a bad person. It's not that it doesn't make you perfect. It is that you have been given a challenge. And if this was a gladiator pit, yeah, and I don't know who I'm facing, yeah, I only know one thing for sure. This is a gladiator pit. I've been armed with very specific tools to get the job done, be it tools that I've acquired over a long career, which is very much the storyline of Taken.
it is. Yep.
The Neeson. I don't know what my opponent has. I have absolutely no clue what will happen. I just know this. Whoever's in front of me will die. And if I die, so be it.
Amen.
And if I don't
Amen.
die, well, let's hope I'm not crippled. And should I be crippled, I am also absolutely okay with that because I have chosen this fate. Now, whether I've been captured and made into a gladiator slave or actively chosen this path, so be it. My fate is to die. You know, amor fati, memento mori. And if I am to slay a, I don't know, a fucking tiger, which is per definition dangerous, so be it. If I am to fight a 100-man challenge or do a 100-man challenge armed to the teeth and somehow come out alive, not only would that be a miracle, boy, would that make a great story.
Absolutely. And the story is, it's very perspective based. Like when you bring up Taken from the perspective of Liam Neeson's career,
Mm-hmm.
right? In the story, not as the actor, as the character in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's the climax. The movie Taken is the climax. It's that decision where all of his entire skills of the career, now he's got a real reason to use them for his family. He didn't before. He was just putting food on the table. Now he's got to save their life. Versus the movie in itself, at the beginning, that's not the climax, it's the call to action. So the movie is its own hero's journey, but you see, that's a very good analysis of the perspective. And hey, if you want to know how it goes down for Liam Neeson, watch the movie, right?
Watch the
Like,
fucking movie, yeah.
That's the option we have for all of us, is to go down that path. You know, I honestly, I sat down, I got into some movies with some people last night that were not totally, we were on a much higher level, looking into philosophy and history and science and physics and all the stuff on a big scale. Yeah. But it's not what you would expect. However, it's in line with the climax. It's in line with the storyline of a hero's journey. When I go, why does this work? Why does this work? I find why it works, right? What is happening to you now? Why is this working? Why is this happening? Well, you'll find it if you look backwards, and you'll realize where you are on that journey. But honestly, brother, we'll talk forever, and I have a class to get to.
So let's open up the group. Well,
Tony,
the group meaning Tony.
Any questions? Would you like to chip anything in, or are you good?
I'm assuming it's pretty loud right now, so.
Hey, into strip club. Awesome.
I'm going to take over you and Pete's Zoom. It's like Pete took over my Zoom last Saturday. So, hey, what's up? This is Tony. I appreciate you guys. Like, maybe loud, but I'm here. But this is helping. Like, I'm tapped in. You guys keep showing up. That's all I can say. Keep showing up.
Do you have enough dollar bills, man? Shit.
No, but I know what I'm learning a lot. Like, I made some mistakes. Like, you saw the video I posted in my Beyond Clarity.
Yeah.
And I'm learning. And that girl is actually, she's been in this for a while, and she's teaching me, she's showing me. And it's like, I'm getting used to this environment. Women pay me, and I deserve it. I know that I still have situation to make it happen. I know I made it happen. And most importantly, I deserve it.
Good.
Keep showing up.
Keep showing up. Amen. Hashtag tapped in. Hashtag now sane.
I totally see that, right? Like, for anyone who doesn't get the context of this, Tony's at work, right, at a strip club right now, getting his shit done, and he's still here, and he's still investing in himself, right, to learn, to study, to train, and he's applying the concepts in real time at work at a fucking strip club of all locations and venues. And you think like that this doesn't apply to you in your life? Like, get real. This shit is so fundamental, and people don't put that effort into working on it. You guys understand, and look, honestly, if you are listening to this, you probably do understand. So look, that really, I love it. I can see the journey that Tony is on in all of the different layers and aspects, macro, micro, all of it. Keep going, brother. Mad respect, boss.
Yes. And on that note, let's end the call, if that's okay with you, Pete. Fantastic. This has been the Hero Podcast 64. My name is Ryan G from ADS Online Media Strategy with my co-host, the real Pete Kirkwood, your success maker, your king creator, and of course, our guest, Tony Cash from Beyond Clarity. May your life never be the same. I wish you a good morning, good evening, good night.